really the difference between hemp and marijuana is that 0.3% THC. So New York State has said it's legal for you to grow cannabis so long as it has 0.3% THC or less. And taking a step back, THC is the chemical in cannabis that is most commonly known for the psychoactive effects that you have after consuming, and CBD being the one that's more attributed to the therapeutic benefits, even though THC also has therapeutic benefits. It's just CBD is most easily understood in that way. So New York State right now, you could apply to get a license to grow that plant and have a legal business set up. I'm gonna keep that really brief and let people ask questions on stuff. So then we also have medical marijuana that is legal in New York. We have had medical marijuana since 2014 with the passage of the Compassionate Care Act, but we have a very limited medical marijuana program when compared to other states. For example, there's only about 35 dispensaries, which is where you go to buy medical marijuana, 35 dispensaries in the entire state of New York. So there's 2 in all of Monroe County, and that's not serving the number of people that want to access the medicine. And there's also very limited access to what type of products there are. So you can't even get flower, which is the combustible, smokable thing that most people want when they're in the medical marijuana program. So it's really limited, looked at as more of a pilot program, and it's something that we're hoping to improve next year through legislation. And then adult use cannabis, so anything that doesn't fall under hemp or medical marijuana is still illegal in New York. We did pass you can call it a pseudo-decriminalization bill last year. We've been decriminalized in New York since 1977, but we passed a bill to further decriminalize in New York last year. And we have legislation at state level that we're working to get through to legalize for adult use. And I need to get So, yeah, I think I'm going to stop there and see if people have questions, want to add anything at this point. So that's really great. Yeah.
All right. So it's you said we passed to decriminalize it again. So when you apply for employment and you have to take a drug screening, how is that going to work?
Good question. So right now with drug testing, nothing has been passed in the legislation with that in New York State. So your employer can still drug test you, and if you test positive for THC, they can do as they want. New York City did pass legislation this year that says that employers cannot test for THC. And in the bill that we're trying to get passed, it's the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act is the name of the bill. In there would be protections for folks if we were to pass an adult use program that says, okay, employers can no longer say that testing positive for THC is sole reason to not hire someone or to dismiss someone from their job, because we're not saying you can go to work under the influence, but simply if you want to consume when you're not working, then if we're going to set up this legal market, we can't say that you can't work because of that. So it's something we're definitely working towards, but nothing right now. What the decriminalization bill did was previously in 1977 when we passed our first decriminalization bill, there was 2 loopholes in that bill, and it made it so it was still a misdemeanor level offense if you had any amount of cannabis in public sight. So that's how the infamous stop and frisk happened in New York City, where someone would be walking down the street, they would have a dime bag in their pocket. Cops would tell them to empty their pockets, and they'd get in less trouble if they did that, but really you got in more trouble because it's in public sight and it's now a misdemeanor instead of being in your pocket and having it be just a violation. So this decriminalization bill had to close that loophole to make it so any amount of cannabis under 2 ounces, whether it's in public sight or not, is now just a violation and you can't be charged with a misdemeanor. There's still a lot of problems with that decriminalization bill. There's a lot of holes in it, but it does it does also call for automatic expungement of people who have been charged with those crimes in the past. So that's something that's been talked about in some of these previous meetings about how, okay, well, what does automatic expungement look like? What does that mean? How do people know that their records are expunged? How do they trust the state that they're automatically doing that? So these are conversations that we're now having with our coalition across the state and trying to figure out how to answer those questions. Did anyone else want to add?
One of the things I was going to say is that a lot of the details about how all of this will roll out have not been worked out.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the reasons it did not pass in the last section, was because there was not enough information, there was not enough feedback from communities, people like yourselves who can give information that can be of value to legislators. And I think that if we think about this realistically, even though there may not be a requirement to, be able to ask for whether or not you test positive, some of that will be industry driven too. It's very much just like alcohol, for example. If you're a pilot, you're not supposed to drink, before you fly a plane. So there's a lot that really needs to be worked out. So a lot of the questions that may come up are things that are still the questions that need to be really worked through by all of the people in the legislature, but they have to be informed by you. Because in reality, the people who have been most disproportionately affected are the local people, realistically, and they have not previously had a voice in any of the laws that were being put forward in the legislature, but that's what we're trying to get right now. As you're probably aware, all of the marijuana laws are something that have been legalized in many states already. We've learned a lot of lessons from the things that they did well and the things that they did wrong. So we're using that information. We're also taking information from people so that we can really be better informed and provide what I think to be a more realistic way to roll out any legislation that does get passed.
And I just wanted to say something back to Mary's talking about it being decriminalized. Realize that most of the law enforcement that is on the street, they have no idea what is really going on. So don't be surprised if they get it wrong or anything like that. You can look in the newspaper, and someone again was arrested for 25 pounds of hemp with all the paperwork. Everything was in order, but the post office called, and then that person was arrested.
Yeah.
It'll work out, and he'll be released, but he'll be in jail for a little while.
Is it the big CBD bus in New York City from a few weeks ago? Another one? Okay.
Yesterday or the day before.
Yeah. So that's also a big part of what we do as Roc NORML, is not only going in grassroots lobbying in Albany and also with our local elected officials, but we're meeting with local stakeholders too. So right now, our number one goal is to meet with Rochester Police Department, and our goal is to be able to do some training with the officers, the street officers, to be able to educate them on what the actual law is right now, be there with CBD flower to show them this is legal. How are you going to know the difference between this and
Are they actually open to that?
It's a funny relationship we have with them right now. They refer people to us to do presentations in the community, so they have respect for us and know who we are as an organization. They won't take a meeting with us at this point, so we're working on it. It's a goal of, the name of the game with the work that we do is persistence. We usually don't get an answer the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth time we reach out to someone, so we just have to stay at it. And then once we are able to get a meeting with someone, we can make a lot of things happen. But the issue gets little respect, and we have to work for it.
And on the point where we're talking about learning from a lot of other states, New York really does need your input and participation. This is going to work because Illinois right now is set up to have one dispensary for 110,000 users. That's for recreational. That's not going to work. It's going to be a disaster like so many other states.
So we go to Albany a lot. Last year we went out over a dozen times, and what we do is we go and bring folks like you guys sitting in this room, if we want to go and talk to lawmakers about why legalization is important, what's really the most impactful things in those stories. You know, we're there as kind of the lobbyists to have facts and the information to provide, but they really want to hear people's direct stories. So we'll talk more about how you can get information on that if anyone wants to be involved, but we're going to be going to Albany a lot starting in January to be there informing them and being assistant. So, just something else to add?
Well, I was gonna say, oh, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Back on that bill that you said that wasn't passed, I know a lot of the issues were like the regulations and kind of the barriers it might create, like big businesses moving in and kind of taking over the market.
They already are.
Yeah. Is there anything going on to protect small businesses or anything like that?
Not right now, but that's one of the reasons that we have actually asked you to include in the bill opportunities for worker-owned businesses, because that's the greatest opportunity for smaller businesses to be engaged, right? All the people there are lots and lots of people who are already invested from a very large business perspective in this industry. So getting into that business right now as a smaller business is going to be competitive. But for worker-owned businesses, that will be a part of the legislation that says that there will be funds set aside. One of the things we should talk a little bit about is the fact that all of the products will be taxed, because the taxation is really the reason it's going to be, the legislation is going to get passed through anyway, is to create opportunities for taxation. And the taxation is going to have a community reinvestment component in it. And part of that will be allowing community reinvestment to support the development of worker-owned businesses, which will be part of the legislation.
And so to add to the worker-owned business piece that we're pushing for in the legislation, also it comes down to a lot of how the licensing structure itself is set up in the beginning. So if we look at how our medical marijuana program is set up in New York, it's what's referred to as vertically integrated licenses. And what that essentially means is one business holds every license from seed to sale. So in this industry, you have the cultivation, you have the production, you have the transportation, you have the selling, their dispensary. So it's one business that holds all of those licenses, as opposed to a model where there's like multi-tier licensing. So that's one license for cultivation that someone could hold, or one as for a dispensary that someone could hold. And then it's also recognizing that there's benefits to having some businesses vertically integrated, but putting caps on the size of those businesses is something that we're pushing for in this legislation that we're trying to get passed, is saying we don't want big businesses to come in and be vertically integrated like we've seen with the marijuana program. Because the problem with that is there's one huge barriers to entry at the beginning for financial, when you're looking at the finances.
You wouldn't be able to benefit from
So
that.
what do you think the likelihood of that passing would be? Just out of curiosity.
High.
Pretty slim, realistically. Big business is pushing for this together, so the likelihood of that passing is going to be fairly slim.
That was a big point of
Yeah.
contention last
And
session.
besides economically needing small businesses to thrive to really make a difference here, it's also an issue of quality. If you're selling to another company, they're going to be looking at the product they're purchasing before they process it. And then someone else, another company, will be looking at that, ensuring that the quality is there. There's a concern that fully integrated companies, or even partially integrated companies, you could lose that. And I mean, these products are important. We're ingesting them in our bodies.
So the other piece that we should probably talk about is licensing, right? What do you think the cost of licensing for this would be? I mean,
It's not the
Well,
cost
it
of the
depends
DEA
on
probably.
it's not going to be cheap, right? However, the reason I bring that up is because I think we're talking about it thinking that a lot of the businesses that we might be interested in require a license. But that is not true. There are many, hundreds and hundreds of businesses that will require absolutely no license whatsoever to be a part of that. And there will be ancillary businesses that serve the industry and can generate extremely high levels of revenue without having to be a license, because they're businesses that could be associated with any industry, but could easily be associated
So,
with
so I was
cannabis.
gonna ask because smoke shops have been carrying, you know what I mean, for so long. And I was gonna ask, you know what I mean, like you said, you need a potential like daily feel this stuff.
For CBD,
Yeah.
that's really great right now. Steve.
So actually, the new hemp extract bill that Governor Cuomo just signed now, essentially, if you're a retailer, whether you're Wegmans or a smoke shop, you have to have a retail license to show that you sell CBD. It's not like this big application process, but
But they want to know who's selling it.
They want to know what's
Because there's no regulations right now, so it's as a CBD consumer, you have to be extremely informed and educated and really doing your own research of is there third-party testing, where is this product coming from, is it farm bill compliant, there's a lot that goes into the CBD piece of it, so New York State is taking some steps to help with that regulation. But Kate's more referring to like, for example, like a security business, right? There's going to be more need for security once legalization happens because all of the dispensaries and like cultivation sites are all going to need security.
Glass
And
products, I mean, ancillary products that are associated with the industry that have nothing to do with growing, selling, or any of that, but can easily generate tons of revenue within the industry.
So what is a security business?
Well, every dispensary has to have security. And so you would have to have security. You could start a security, but by the way, that security business can serve other industries as well.
Yeah.
But you can be a security business for people who are engaged in the cannabis industry. Testing labs. There are only 2 sites in the entire state. Right now, there's a backlog of so there's so many different businesses there.
Those ones, testing will have licenses, but testing definitely, we need people to do testing.
And then think about pretty much everything that any other business needs. They need accounts, they need attorneys. You don't have to change your career
Photographers,
necessarily just to get into cannabis.
You just think how can it intersect with cannabis? Yeah.
What we're already doing.
Right.
Maybe not basketball players, but but maybe we can talk about that.
What about like funding and stuff like that? Because I am like not in the process of thinking about starting my own business. So like going out fetching money, figuring out who's like funding my business. How are the people funding? You know what I mean? First time, you know, business. You know what I mean? How do they feel about that? If that's like dishing out the money, dishing out the funds for you to start your own business. You know, are they gonna be on board with? You know what I mean?
Traditional lenders, first of all, it depends on what business you're in, right? Because you know it's a cash business. The federal government does not allow you to use the financial systems for it, even though
So they- okay, that's what I'm-
even though the state may legalize it, the federal laws have not caught up yet. So I think you have to really think about, where your financing is coming, which is why there's already very filthy rich people who are in the industry already because they already have the money. They're already in some other business, so they're in it already. And so finding financing may be challenging at first, and I think you have to really think about that. I mean, that's why it's important to think about the various ways that you can enter the industry if it's something that you have an interest
So
in.
that would be the challenge.
So, we're touching on it already, but what do you see as the biggest struggles in overcoming regulations that typical business owners wouldn't have to concern themselves with in this industry? And what do you think the solution to that is?
Well, when you're looking at the business side of it, like, and Steve, feel free to chime in. I think that the biggest thing with business is that we're looking at a market that is federally illegal, and at the state level, it's legal. So the banking is a huge, huge problem. You don't have access to traditional loans to start up your business, but then beyond that, you can't put your money into a bank.
So the gap between state and federal is like the biggest challenge.
Yes, I think that would be the biggest challenge.
Banking is a huge issue right now, even in the CBD industry, which is federally legal. You can't get merchant services like credit card processing, e-commerce.
We've been
or-
denied merchant services as a 501c4 nonprofit because we simply have marijuana in our
Yeah.
name.
Getting banks to take your money, you can provide all the compliance and all the proof that you want, but generally the bigger banks are more conservative. They're very risk averse and they don't want to touch it. But the good news is that state and local credit unions are starting to hop on board because they're a little more protected under the state regs because their money generally is more in-house. So anytime money goes from state to state, it's technically money laundering because it violates interstate commerce. But as long as the money is within the state, and if the state is like, good with CBD, the money should just stay in the state. So like state and credit unions, even locally, are starting to pick it up. Canada, National Bank, Family First Credit Unions, like this is like, they're small businesses, in the world of big businesses. So it really is kind of a
But
small
even
business.
those banks, there's been experiences where you might get approved for something or they're fine with your banking there. But there's been situations where a week later they will rescind an offer for lending and basically take you out of the bank.
Can I just add something real quick too that's really important? When you talk about the difference between the state and federal, there's a huge tax implication, which is why banks don't want to fund this, because the only thing that you can deduct is cost of goods sold. You can't deduct your payroll, you can't deduct your marketing, because you're technically operating an illegal business. It's like code 280E or something like that. And so that's why it's really risky for banks to lend up front, because there's so much overhead. So while it continues to remain federally illegal, the tax burden is what usually keeps people from being able to sustain a business once they're actually able to get to the point of opening it.
But that also brings it back to what she said. There's other ways you enter into the industry. You gotta be, you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
like loophole. You know what I mean? Basically, gotta sneak into the industry.
Yeah,
In other words.
really, it's folks who get into the industry. I was at an event last year that had a lot of industry people there, and people from Colorado, people from states that have been up and running for a while, and they said the only people making money in this industry right now is the state through the taxes, and the federal government too. They have no problem putting their hand out to collect the taxes. And the problem is a lot of the states have copy and pasted the federal tax code, and so they say, well, since the federal tax code says you can't do this, we all. And so we're trying to work with New York State to not do that and to at least separate the state and federal tax.
And they're hiring consultants from a lot of different states too that will help inform.
Yeah.
things. Because obviously some states will charge exorbitant taxes, which is, crazy. And even in Canada right now, the industry is actually suffering. You would think that in Canada, which the entire country is legalized, and of course a lot of people immediately went and started investing in cannabis businesses in Canada, but the returns on that are actually down right now. So, yeah.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, at what point do you think, after all these states start to regulate it and learn, at what point do you think federally do they realize the benefits outweigh any of the negatives?
It's one person in the federal government right now. It's Mitch McConnell, who sits in the the Senate Majority. Yeah, Senate Majority Leader. So any bill goes through him, and he has said he's going to block any cannabis bill from going through the 12.
Pretty much any bill.
Any
Pretty much any bill. Exactly.
Yeah.
He's literally come out and said before, I will not even bring a marijuana bill to the floor for a vote. We actually got a banking bill to move through a committee in the House and make some pretty good movement on it. And it'll get to the Senate and it'll die in the Senate. So until Mitch McConnell gets out of his seat is really, or if, look at what the president is, so anything's possible to happen. There's talks of the president using it as something to, he has the power to deschedule. So who knows what's going to happen? But in terms of everything we can predict happening with all of this,
Mitch McConnell.
is a Republican from Kentucky. Yeah, so it's the federal government knows that there's powers that don't want it to happen.
What is the distance from schools that you have to be in this industry? Is there a certain distance or?
That'll come in the regulations after legalization, but if you look, we're trying to heavily based off the alcohol regulations and zoning, so I think it's like within 1,000 feet of a school and park is what the alcohol regulations are, and we've seen states do like Colorado and just alcohol.
Is that for every part of the industry or just certain parts of the industry?
That is, it's going to be zoning for different things, so
Right now, even the medical marijuana cannot be located near a
Yeah.
school. You can't- So I'm sure with the recreational marijuana, it'll have similar rules.
Yeah, and so it'll come down to the zoning regulations, and like the county and the city will have hearings on it, which will be involved in, where we work closely with the Rochester City Council, and they're unanimously in support of supporting legalization and having it be in Rochester, so we're very fortunate for that. But there's still gonna be regulations that'll,
So do you know if these zoning points are urban or suburban points?
none of it we know yet. It's gonna come down to the different places to zone.
I do real estate, that's what I do, and it's not houses, it's office and industrial,
Buildings,
retail,
yeah.
and it's gonna come down to each individual places.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh is not gonna look like Rochester, it's not.
Even in Colorado, most of the dispensaries are like in industrial areas where you wouldn't expect them to be. It's not like, nothing is out on Main Street.
And hopefully that's not what we see in Rochester. Hopefully it's zoned more like how bars are, right? Because there's a lot of different zoning things we have to look at. So like the bill we're trying to pass and we're hopeful will be included is an on-site consumption license. So like dispensaries where you go to buy it, on-site consumption is where you go to consume it. So like a coffee shop or a bar. And those license zones we're really pushing to have be out in the public, right? Because there's no reason for us to need to be out in industrial areas. You don't do that with alcohol. Why? You don't do that with coffee. Why would we do that with cannabis? But then when we look at like
There are
growing,
distilleries popping up like in places like walking distance from an apartment complex or a school or university or something.
Yeah.
Or the hospital.
and I don't think that we will
Distilleries
zone it out
everywhere.
of the city because we look at our medical dispensaries and there's one on University. So the city's not trying to push it out of the city, but it's more of like the production and the cultivation. Where's that going to be zoned to happen?
So I've been to Amsterdam, obviously. It's,
Me too.
It's tolerated there, and it was super cool being there. Do you think, I mean, like you were saying, is that something that's possible? Like,
That is the
that
on-site
drinking?
consumption, yeah.
Do you think that will be pushed before like any other
That-
bills would be, or?
That is a proposed license with legalization, so like you could apply to get.
So it would
and
need to be hand in hand with legalization?
yeah, because we have seen it be an afterthought in other states where they're like, oh, we've legalized it, but we haven't given people anywhere to legally consume because there's some people that can't consume in their house, right?
Right.
And so it really is this whole other industry that you create if you have on-site consumption licenses. Think like there's like bud and breakfast, you know, it's like a bed and breakfast, and yeah, like yoga, like elevated yoga. There's all types of things where, and that's really where like you start thinking of the ancillary businesses, and there is a license involved in it, but those licenses were pushing to be inexpensive and really restaurants, you know, like any existing business could apply for one so long as they meet the qualifications, they would be able to get one. So that's the, you know, Albany needs to hear from us and needs to hear how important it is because Albany doesn't consume cannabis, right? Like they just look at paper
They
and
are
they don't
not
know real
outside.
people that it affects.
Old white Richmond.
Once the state
No.
decides on those laws and whether those licensing are available, then it's up to the city or the county to decide whether or not they're going to be applied and where they are,
That is to be determined. We hope we would like for it to be left up to the state. What it's usually left up to is like the regulatory body who goes through the applications at like the state level, and then, you know, the big thing with New York is like we need to make sure it all doesn't go down to New York City, and that there's actual like, okay, it needs to be proportionate to the populations and to actually be dispersed equally throughout the state, because that's what's happening right now with the medical marijuana licenses, is they're all downstate. So another thing that we need
Is
to
that
just
something
make sure.
that you anticipate happening, or is it?
All going down to downstate, I don't know. I think that we have built strong voices up here in upstate and western New York. Crystal People-Stokes is the sponsor of this bill, and she is an assembly member in the assembly majority leader from Buffalo, and so she is a really strong voice in this issue and advocate to make sure that it's not just New York City that gets all of this.
Isn't it a possibility though that, town by town can opt in or opt out?
That is another thing that will be determined by whatever legislation we pass. It is either going to be left up to the town, city level or the county level, but there will be the opportunity for places to either to opt out and say we will not be giving licenses to any businesses in our county.
And so that leads back to what she was saying, that, if places are gonna opt out of this, they shouldn't be getting the tax revenue from this.
Correct.
And that's what we'd like to stop.
So say we wanna go get our license, our money is ready, we have we're looking to do lab production, cultivation, and all that, all in one. We have area, locations, and where do we go? Or where do we start?
You start with coming to Albany with us to make sure that we actually can do that. And then we're hoping that through the legislation, we're going to have an Office of Cannabis Management and that will oversee the licensing, and it would be starting with them.
Another thing to think about is, I've heard a lot of talk about, there's not going to be take ER, there's not going to be 100 licenses in East Rochester. It's probably going to be preferential if they have control over it, that they know the person has been successful at running businesses for at least a year, and that they know the industry. So
The cannabis industry or business in
well,
general?
if you're selling and you need, retail space, you're really going to want to get in and know the officials and let them know who you are, more importantly.
What I can, just to add to that too, because I do a lot with lending for businesses, I deal a lot with small businesses. Typically, in traditional lending with a bank, they want to see that you've been in business for at least 2 years. So the earlier you can get it started, even maybe if you don't have a brick and mortar, because I'll tell you right now, the first thing you need to do is not look at space. Get your business started and have everything like that, your business plan, everything concrete, so that once all this stuff comes out, you already have it set up. Because banks, any lending institution that's going to look at you, regardless of whether they're going to give you a good rate or not, because you're a new business or you're getting a grant, they're all going to require that anyways.
And the big businesses have already
And I just want to go back to the money piece and the loan piece. That's also something that we're trying to get included in the legislation, is we recognize that the money is a barrier to entry for folks to have a more diverse and equitable industry, because we've seen in states that have legalized, going back to what Kate said, we're not the first ones to do this, so we get to look at what other states have done right and wrong. And I think we can all agree that it's wrong that the industry is owned by a majority of rich white men, right? And disproportionately, those aren't the people who've been negatively impacted from marijuana prohibition. So we need to look and figure out how do we solve that problem? How do we actually build a diverse and equitable industry, because it's not going to build itself because there's all these barriers in place, and money being one of the biggest barriers. So we're going to make a lot of money from the taxes, and so we're trying to put some responsibility on the state to say, take responsibility for marijuana prohibition up until this point, and let's create some coffers of money that can be used for low, no interest loans for businesses that would go towards supporting businesses for folks that have been disproportionately impacted from the war on drugs, and in other ways to make the industry more diverse and equitable. So there's a lot of creative thinking that's required here, and the right answers haven't really, they haven't come up in other states. No state has gotten it 100% right. So we're really, that's what we're trying to do with this bill.
So the states that have legal marijuana, have the sales or the distribution of illegal marijuana, has that declined? I just wanted to know
Good
Like, is
question.
that still a thing, or like, what's
Good
the plan?
question. In some cases, probably no. In fact, I think that even if this bill passes, there will still be an unregulated market for many, many years to come. But that will create, actually, I think, a much more disproportionate legality issue because people who could possibly have been part of the regulated industry or not, so then they're still involved in that whole criminalization piece and they'll end up going to jail anyway. So there's a lot that still needs to be worked through. It's gonna take about 10 years or so.
Yeah.
There was a Midwest state last week, I was reading, I can't recall, they opened it up for an additional lottery for licenses, probably for retail, and it was 13 white men that got them.
Where was this?
It's one of the, I can't remember if it was Michigan opened up for more licenses because it was Michigan that has 110, or for every dispensary, 110,000 people. But, so that's why it's really important to show up to lobby days, make your voice heard. It's so important to vote, because we really have to try to get as much correct at the first pass. Because changing anything after that is not really likely.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I was just touching on her point a little bit actually. The unregulated market, even if it is legalized, you said in other states we've been able to kind of realize what they've done wrong, and like in some states it's almost more expensive to go to a dispensary instead of just getting it from the black market.
And it's so much of the education that
Yeah,
we're doing, yeah.
And I guess is New York like looking at that? Like,
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is something that is going to be one of the biggest things that we're fighting about this session is the high taxes. I mean, California, like let's look at California as an example. If you put the taxes too high,
46%.
you're going to cripple the industry, and then you're also going to make it so people are just going to funnel to the unregulated market. So the state really has to recognize, and Albany doesn't, sometimes they don't like it when we say this, but there's already an up and running market that you're going to be in competition with, and you have to look at what those prices are and have competitive prices. So you can't put a tax that I'm not going to pay twice as much, and no one's going to pay twice as much. I'll pay $10 more.
But remember, there's market segmentation too, let's face it, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about this, there'll be businesses, like we already know the rich white men are gonna have those businesses, and they're gonna be taxed heavily or whatever the taxation rate, they're gonna go for it, and people will go and buy from them, right? Then they're always gonna be the street level, and people will always continue to do that, whether or not there are people who are doing that now, right? They're not gonna stop doing it. There are people who on their grocery list, they've got weed, they've got, everything else. So that's not gonna stop. So I think that even if you do have a lower taxation rate, you have to look at the market segmentation for the product and who's gonna buy. Who's your customer base?
There are people out there who would like to know what they're buying.
Right.
Make sure
Yeah.
the quality is there, which is-
And I think a majority of cannabis consumers would say, yeah, I'd pay a little more for my product to know that I'm getting this terpene profile, or it has this cannabinoid profile. And
It doesn't have pesticides.
yeah, it's been tested. I know that this type of cannabis makes me feel this way. People would pay a little bit of extra money for that, but we're not going to pay twice as much for it. And so that's what the state really needs to understand and not be greedy in this. Like, they need to recognize they're making zero money off of this right now. And then if you create this market and if you do it the right way, you could make a lot of money, but you can also fuel the unregulated market if you make the taxes too high. And while talking about that, I think it's a segue into something that Roc NORML is really advocating for strongly is home cultivation. We think it's extremely important that people have the right to grow your own plant, and the state doesn't necessarily agree with that. The bill that we're trying to get passed right now does have home cultivation in it, but it's really so it's our bill that we're trying to get passed versus the governor's bill that he's trying to get passed. And so it's going to be a negotiation between the two bills. And the governor does not want home cultivation, whereas our bill with our co-sponsors does want home cultivation. So our prediction is it will be somewhere in the middle. We'll probably get home cultivation for medical patients, which we'll see as a win because we have nothing right now, and medical patients can't even grow right now in New York. But we're gonna try our hardest to get it for adult use because it just creates an unnecessary, illegal, like something that's illegal in this space when you don't say people can't brew their own beer. And you know, their fear is that it fuels the unregulated market, and that's not the truth. What fuels the unregulated market is overtaxation and having an overregulated market. So it's
What are the laws in like Colorado and California for home cultivation?
12 plants for Colorado.
Just Colorado, I don't know.
Colorado has home cultivation. I can't remember the exact number. Oregon has home cultivation.
A lot of states seem to sit between like 4 and 6 plants.
Yeah, but Rhode Island has 12. Like,
Which is actually a good sign because the governor just hired or just
Yeah.
appointed the old medical marijuana top regular from Rhode Island to be like the head of cannabis operations here in New York. And he actually supported the law that had, you could have 12 plants in flower and
12 in
plants
that.
in
In that you
vegetables.
have 24 plants. Yeah.
That's a lot of people. I mean, it's, so,
That might fuel an unregulated market.
it's a good sign.
Or it might kill the market.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a place we can go read these bills? Your bill is what it's almost, is it online?
It is.
Yeah.
It
It's
is.
online.
Yeah, it's
And Google MRTA.
yeah. Yep. If you just Google like Senate MRTA.
And you can go to the New York, you can go to the New York State Legislative website too, and then you'll see the full bill and who's sponsoring, who's supporting it, and you can write to them.
Yes.
They listen.
Yeah, we were able to get a co-sponsor added last year. Harry Bronson, an assembly member up here, added on as a co-sponsor this year, and he's really the only one from up here who's a co-sponsor. We have, that's in the assembly. The Senate, we have all Republican representatives, and the Republican Party of New York has taken a stance that they're not supportive of legalization. So,
3 of them are all retired.
but yeah, so I don't know how that's gonna affect our strategy going into Albany next year. Probably still won't talk.
Do
to
they,
them.
so if they announce their retirement, do they get to participate in the legislative
They-
session going through here?
They still have to work. We're gonna get paid.
But you can still write them and call them, they pay attention to it. Each representative literally has a staff member that is paid to take all of that input. So if they think if their people want it, for the most part, they'll listen. It's just, there's a very vocal minority of people that are scared of this, that are pushing
Very vocal.
against
The
it.
PTA and law
they're very
enforcement
well
are not afraid to keep going. They go to Albany so much and call so much, and they have nothing better to do than just fight the legalization of marijuana. So we are going to be organizing a lot of virtual lobby days too this year. Nevada NORML chapter just had a huge virtual lobby day the day after Veterans Day, where they had hundreds of people calling in from all over the state, and they actually were able to get 2 co-sponsors added onto the bill from a virtual lobby day. So we're super inspired by that, and just knowing that like you call and ring their phones. We did it last year. We rung their phones off the hook, and their voicemails were filled up. They stopped answering the calls by the end
By
of the
the time at the
day.
end of the day, everybody we were with like 4 or 5 legislators down on Long Island and we were targeting, and by the time it was 5 o'clock, it was like, this message can no longer take
When is this going back on the vote?
So the session starts January 8th. We're working on a new version of our bill to kind of take in all the things from last session that needed to be revised in our bill. And we're expecting Governor Cuomo to release his new bill by the end of January, which is also when we are expecting to release ours. And then it's all real quick after that. Then budget negotiations start February 15th-ish. And what that means is if we don't get our bill passed by February 15th, which we hope we will, but chances are slim, it's going to go into budget negotiations. And then the budget gets passed by April 1st. And so we're really looking at an April 1 date for legalization.
I was just gonna ask, as like a Rochester registrar, what is that I can do or we can do as a team collectively to kind of.
One thing is gonna be working on get out the vote.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I think, you know, us being a sponsor for you guys this year is huge. That Keith approached us and asked us to sponsor you. We were super grateful for that because just having the visibility out, and like when we're gonna come and table at your games, and like having you guys come and participate at our events, like whenever you're able to come join us, telling your friends about it, and getting the word out there about the work that we're doing, because that, you know, people will come to events that their friends tell them to come to. So that really just like supporting the work that we're doing, and I think like on social media, as much as you want to share our stuff, that's huge. We're really limited for, like, we can't promote anything on social. Facebook won't let us spend any money on ads, and so any growth that we have to do through social media is organic. And yeah, I think those like really like word of mouth and social media to just help get more people involved.
So
in this
you can't buy an ad on
conversation.
Facebook like for this event tonight? Can we buy an ad on Facebook for this event tonight?
Can personal people do it?
Like, I mean, could our
Could be,
business?
yes.
Probably could, but there's a risk of shutting down your website or your account after that. It's like, my gosh, shut down a year ago.
So but you could buy an ad as a person, or they could still shut that down.
Yeah, you have to have a business account. I don't know if you can do ads through a video account, but if you have a business account pushing cannabis related, I mean, they're pretty interesting, and they shut it off the virtually that way. What is the THC policy?
We don't test our apples or marijuana. We don't have a problem with that.
Well, yeah, because the MLB just came out and said that as well.
And they're like, we have the best owner.
That's awesome because you shouldn't, you know, because players are allowed to go out and drink after games and that's celebrated, and this is a lot healthier than that.
But just as a direct thing, you can always, I mean, if you, again, go on the website of the New York State Legislature and write them letters. I mean, call them. Their phone numbers are there. You can make phone calls.
Come lobby
Call
us.
them.
That's how we
I mean,
do
but
it.
you can do that any time of the day because they track
Yeah.
all of that. And you can do that any day, any time. There's no, you don't have to go through anybody. You can do that individually. You can get your friends to write and to send letters and stuff too. And just so you know, it's not, I mean, we're a small group here, obviously. We're not the only ones doing this. I mean, they're actually hiring people from across the country to help inform them about how to do this as well. So they're hearing from lots of people, not just us, not just our girls. Like
So we can even put our interns on the phone.
you can put anybody, yeah, you can have them call, write letters. Senator Bailey, I know, is extremely supportive of this. There's a New York State equity agenda that's moving forward because there's a lot of groups that are doing stuff. So
What about even getting business owners, like you said, to participate?
Yeah.
Send letters in too, like stamping it and approving it with their letterhead in there. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
that's what they pay attention to. They want to know who votes
Yeah.
and who's interested, and they will take that information. But so you don't have to go through us.
Yeah, but
you know?
we have, that's a great point, and we have a great relationship with the local craft brewery association, and so working with them to, you know, in support of legalization to, you know, we have medical professionals that we work with, so we're really organizing for lobbying next year to elevate the different voices.
Okay, I have another question. So you can't buy an ad on Facebook as a business that promotes CBD. But if we didn't mention this event, but we said, come out and hang out with the Rochester Razor Sharps at 153 State Street,
That's fine.
then we can buy an ad for
Yeah.
that.
So you got finagle in this industry.
Yeah, and so like Steve was able to get us some ads on Facebook for a while. We were able to until they were like, stop doing this. And then he stopped, and then we used someone else's card to do it, and they're like, really, stop doing this. And then people's Facebooks get shut down, and we're like, okay, we've got a good following, we're gonna stop doing this now until they're gonna shut us down. And yeah. So yeah, there's all these weird barriers that this industry and just we're not even industry, right? We're cannabis consumer advocacy, so we don't even touch anything. We're not illegal in any way.
Yeah, we got our account shut off because what we were doing, we were just sharing relevant news articles. It was like coming out of Albany, like paying to target people in the area to see it, and it was just spreading news, and they shut it down.
Yeah, it was literally just news. Yeah.
So if you have people if you have other people who you're interested in working with, or if you have groups of people who who might be interested in launching a business that could be associated with it. Now is the time to do it. And again, we invest in those businesses. We help grow those businesses. So if that's something you're interested in, you want to create a worker-owned business that could be a beneficiary of CRA funding to help do that kind of thing, then that's another option for you. But now is the time.
I was at an entrepreneur day, and then one of the tables that I went to, the vendor that I went to, he suggested that, old white guy, he was like, hey, you gotta go where the government's going, he suggested it, and that was, on a college campus, so it's definitely, the concern.
And they remember, you go a couple times, because people don't go and, they see the same people over and over again, that are the paid lobbyists, or that are the just the annoying people that are always there. When we go and talk to Albany, they're like, oh, we were so excited to see you on our schedule today, because they're talking about stuff all day that they don't necessarily want to be talking about, but they listen when we go and talk to them. And a lot of times we're not talking to the actual elected official, it's a staffer, but you'll learn quickly the staffers run Albany. They tell the elected officials everything, and they inform them of really what's going on, and so they're really who you want to be talking to. It's like time. So Roc NORML is going to be starting in January on the third Wednesday of every month. We're going to be hosting our monthly networking and membership meetings here at UUU, third Wednesday of the month. So we'll be promoting that on our social and everything, and that's a great way to keep getting involved with this. We're going to have different topics every month and be sharing information about what's going on, and just to network with other people that are interested in getting into this space. NYHempLab also does different events. Do you guys have anything on the calendar coming up?
We are producing the 2020 calendar right now, so nothing until the end of the year. But then we plan on having different types of events pretty steadily, at least twice a month. And they could just be networking events, or it could be a listening session, or a workshop of some sort.
That's after you become a member of Roc NORML.
Volunteer on a committee.
And then, we are working to figure out what events we're going to put on next year as this partnership of Communities in Cannabis to really keep the community business focus going. And
one of the things that we really want is actual feedback from everyone. We don't want to keep making up content that we think you want to hear about.
Yes.
So the more you can email us,
and we actually have a survey that we will be sending out the next few weeks. So we have sign your email up if you didn't already. We'll post about it on social too when we have the survey up, because we really want to get people's input on this, and we're planning events for next year. So any other questions, comments, concerns? No. Well, thanks everyone for coming.